Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for being here today. And for those of you watching, thank you for watching. I'm Tiffany Davis. I'll be moderating today's discussion. I've worked in the entertainment industry my entire life. And after we hear from our esteemed guest, who I will introduce before each one speaks, I will tell you some not so fun stories from the world of drugs and entertainment. The reason we're here is because a group of doctors care deeply about the nation's prescription abuse epidemic. And the California Association of Oral and Maxillofacial Surgeons has developed this program to educate students and parents on the detriments of opioid and other prescription abuse. We are fortunate to have one of their board members spearheading this effort for us today. He has been practicing for 52 years in Beverly Hills, which is very hard for me to believe. He doesn't look a day over 30. Please welcome Dr. Alan Kay.
Last year they said 29, now it's 30, see? Anyway, thank you for being here. You are going to be part of a hopefully larger program in the future. And I wanted to tell you that Tiffany and I went through the Police Academy training program to give us an idea what it was like to go through the training program or a partial training program of what officers go through to become a policeman. And after doing that, you learn so much that you realize, wow, that's only cut out for certain people who can handle that kind of stuff. But they wanted us to be ambassadors to let the rest of the population know what it's really like to be a policeman. It's not a joke. That being said, you heard Tiffany mention you're going to be ambassadors. You're going to go around the school and you're going to tell people what you've heard here. And hopefully we'll have other lectures like this, and that will contribute to getting the word out about what's going on with opioids, especially in this state, because this state almost underwent a 3-time increase in people who are dying, etc., becoming addicted. These numbers, the CDC just released. They are new numbers, and they're going to knock your socks off. Now, there are other states where they tend to tell you that things are dropping, and in some states maybe they are, but they're going up in this state. So with any further ado, I'm going to begin the talk here. As you heard, it's the California Association of Oral and Maxillofacial Surgeons, who, by the way, were taken to task by the federal government when they said that we are responsible for part of what's going on with the opioid issue. They sent a letter. We were stunned by it. But in retrospect, we were writing a lot of prescriptions. And we were doing it not because we're trying to make addicts. We were doing it because patients were having surgeries done by people in my profession, which obviously, contributed to pain postoperatively. And of course, to keep the patients comfortable, you would write for 20, 30 pills. And trouble is that most of these patients are under 24 years of age. And the teen years are very, very bad when it comes to the susceptibility of getting involved with opioids. So that being said, we are going to begin the talk. And because numbers are important, by the way, feel free to take a picture, but there's a point that's going to come up about being a good Samaritan, and there's a phone number there. If you want to get that picture, I suggest you take a snapshot of that because it's something you may want to use in the future, and you can put it into your phone numbers. Okay, moving along, literature is important. Obviously, we teach you to read. That makes sense. Further on, we also teach you things in science, biology and chemistry. But, because you're important, we teach you to avoid opioids. Why am I giving this talk to you? Well, I gave you that already. I'm an oral surgeon. I'm a specialist in mouth, jaws, face, highly trained in postoperative pain management. And I also understand the risks of opioids, obviously. And what are they? Okay, well, let's tell you what they are. The medications that relieve pain derived from the opium poppy, made legally and illegally. They work by binding to the brain's opioid receptors. There are opioid receptors in your brain that respond to this stuff. And they block pain in the brain. This is very critical. They're blocking the brain perception. It's not having anything to do with the injury was sustained. And that's why you are now being given prescriptions for acetaminophen, Tylenol, and ibuprofen, for Advil and Motrin. You put those combos together, and I'm telling you, if I write 3 opioid prescriptions a year, it's a lot. That's how great. Don't ever look at Advil or Motrin or ibuprofen or Tylenol in any other way except as being a very profound drug to alleviate pain because they're anti-inflammatories. Opioids create a euphoria. They're taken over a period of time. They require larger and larger doses because your brain receptors need more to upregulate. They keep upregulating, and they need more drug to just keep you comfortable. They're extremely habit-forming and ultimately could be deadly. Opioid epidemic and the deadliest drug crisis in all of American history. There were 81,083 overdose deaths due to opioids in 23. That's a huge jump. If you had come to this lecture a few months ago, you wouldn't have seen that number. These numbers just came up. Opioids kill more people each year than car crashes, guns, suicide, or homicide. That's huge numbers. 222 Americans died, 23 overdosing involving prescriptions, opioids, heroin, and fentanyl. That's each day. That's one death every 6.5 minutes. The last time I gave this at this podium, it was one death in 11 minutes. Things are going in the wrong direction. The opioid epidemic nationwide, increase of 625% related since 2000. Okay? Epidemics in California, it's in your community. More than 7,500 Californians died in 23. Overdose. Their opioid-related deaths are increasing. Obviously, I've said that several times already. 1,000 deaths in the year 2000, 7,523, 6,850 due to fentanyl. Okay, 22,474 emergency room visits related to opioid overdoses, and I'm sure we will hear something from our guests who can speak to what's going on in the emergency rooms. In addition to reducing pain, here's what the opioids do. Just going to go through this quickly. Drowsiness, sedation, mental confusion, vomiting, can cause constipation, pinpoint pupils, slowed pulse, depressed body, and of course, overdose and death. Common prescription opioids are hydrocodone, Narcos. These are all the names, right? Fentanyl. We can go into each one. It's not worth it. They're all basically doing the same thing and giving you trouble and aggravation. Signs of opioid abuse. Okay, drowsiness. This is where you see a friend that's looking like this, itching, pulse, pupil size, small. Okay, I could talk about this for hours, but the point of the matter is, I'm pushing the wrong button here. Sorry, we're going backwards in time. Confusion, nausea, vomiting, shaking, sweating. Okay, passing out. Where are we? Here we are. Signs of opioid misuse and abuse, behavioral signs. These are the things you have to look for in your fellow students. Excessive mood swings, hostility, moody, irritable, change in friends, attitudes, activities, sports, and hobbies, poor decision-making, poor attendance, poor grades, poor hygiene, increased isolation, wearing long-sleeve shirts, intravenous use, appearing to be high, giddy, and euphoric, stealing and selling medications. All right. What happens when the pills run out? Guess what you do? I'll tell you what you do. Signs of, well, we missed that one. What happened here? What do you do? Let's go back. Okay. When the pills run out, you take out your microscope, your telescope, and heroin has become the drug of choice for many who are addicted to opioids. It is illegal. It is an illegal opioid used without medical supervision to get high. Heroin. Diacetylmorphine. Heroin comes from the opium poppy flower. It can look like white powder, black tar. These are little names that the addicts use because they feel so endeared to it. It's like naming one of their pets. Horse, smack, skag, brown sugar. Much of this is made by criminals. No quality control for illegal use. How does it make you feel? Instant rush of good feelings, dreamy or euphoria, disoriented, sleepy. Here is heroin. How is it used? Well, that's the most dangerous way. Injected, snorted, smoked. No matter how you take it, it changes your brain quickly. Heroin is extremely addictive. You quickly build a tolerance. We spoke about that a few minutes ago, about the upregulating of these receptors in the brain. You begin to feel, you need it just to feel normal at some point. Forget the rush of the high. That disappears, and if you don't get your drug, you can't even feel normal. And when you feel bad, that's what makes these people go out and do violent crime to get money to get drugs. It makes you sick when you try to quit. Very sick. Heroin facts. Heroin is stronger, cheaper, and easier to get than prescriptions, obviously. It's more dangerous than prescription pills. You never know what it's cut with, and you know it's being cut with now, fentanyl. And by the way, the people that are copying them now, you wouldn't tell the difference between a legal pill and one that's being made by them. Heroin overdose often leads to death. So does fentanyl. Fentanyl is a synthetic opioid. It's especially dangerous. It's often added to heroin pills. I just told you about that. 30 to 50 times more deadly than heroin. The equivalent amount to a few grains of salt, and that's not a joke. We're talking micrograms, okay? That's really a few grains like salt will kill you. It's hard to believe, but it's crazy. Okay, so let's get to your brain. What are we talking about when we talk about teenagers? The brain development, maturation occurs well into their 20s. Brain development in teens. Areas of the brain that develop early teen years involve. This is the teen brain. Risk-taking, sensation-seeking, adrenaline rush. Years later, you get older as you approach 24 years of age. Regulation of emotions, things change. Impulse control, considering the consequences, judgment, and decision. Brain development in teens, what does it mean? Based on recent scientific evidence, the teen brain makes you more susceptible to opioid addiction than an older adult. It's not your fault, you're susceptible. It's important to reduce your exposure to opioids. You have to remember this is all about chemistry. We are talking about chemistry. You cannot change chemistry in the brain. So anything I'm showing you on the screen is in real time. So that means it's not your fault that you do these things. This is the way the brain's set up. And because of that, it makes you very vulnerable. So it isn't like, oh, you're a bad person because you're doing. No, it's because you don't understand this. And somebody says, take this, you'll feel great. And you take it and they call your family up and say you're dead. It's as simple as that. Do you think vaping, marijuana, alcohol, and prescription drugs can lead to other drugs? I think so. And I think most of the country in the world thinks so. So when they tell you that marijuana is nothing, don't worry about it. No, it's not. It's not. Nobody knows who has the addictive personality. I just heard something very interesting from Jody Barber, who will speak to us. And she told me something that she's going to tell you about a test they have now. But the point is, it's just like smoking. We don't know who has the addictive personality. There are people addicted to anything. You have a bookworm addicted to books, right? An exercise fanatic addicted to, there's a high that goes with running, or we call the runner's high. That's an addiction. All these things are addicting. But the problem is certain of the addictions can be deadly. 9 out of 10 who meet the medical criteria for addiction started smoking, drinking, or using other drugs before they actually turned 18 years of age. 75% of young people who use heroin report misusing and abusing prescription painkillers before starting heroin. They find these things in their parents' bathroom, in the medicine cabinet. What can you do? Do not take medications that weren't prescribed for you, and don't accept anything from somebody who tells you, oh, this was prescribed for my mother, it's okay. Don't do it. Prince died from taking pills he thought were Vicodin. They were fentanyl. Killed him. Demi Lovato overdosed on what she thought was oxycodone. It was laced with fentanyl. And the latest one, whoops, missed it. Damn, let me get back there. Hold on. Let me get back. Where are we? All right, I got to get back. All right, hold on. This is important. Matthew Perry, remember that one? Just recently. He died from a ketamine overdose. Okay. Now, this is important. 9/11 Good Samaritan law. This is what it means. If you're around, let's say you're all doing something you should not be doing. I don't know who's in this room doing something. The fact of the matter is, if you're with somebody and you think something's happening real bad, and now you're all scared because you've been doing it, and this person's been doing it, and he got a pill with fentanyl or whatever, and he's lying there or she's lying there, turning blue. You've got to call somebody. And the Good Samaritan law protects you. What does that mean? You might have been involved doing it with them, but if you save this life, you will not be prosecuted. Okay? So that's a pretty cool thing to be aware of, that you're not going to, don't call anybody. We'll get in trouble. No. You got to call somebody. All right. The following are signs of overdose: unconsciousness, passed out, cannot wake up. It's not breathing very slowly, gurgling sounds. Did it again. His lips that are blue or grayish in color. Why should you care about 9/11? I'll tell you why. The law empowers you to do it. Okay, you're going to save a life. Encourages anyone to call 9/11 when you see an experienced drug or alcohol overdose. Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, Sam, I can't even pronounce that, but that's what it is, has a national helpline, and this is the phone number, okay? If anybody you know has a problem or you have a problem, you can call that number, and this is what you'll get. You'll get a possible opioid. The helpline gives you this: free and confidential. If you want to take a picture of this, please do. 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, information and service. It's amazing how I do that. They put the button so close, it's ridiculous. Okay, there we go. Okay, English and Spanish. For individuals and family members facing mental or substance use, provides referrals to local treatment facilities, and gives you a little heads up so what you might be able to do. So, we keep missing the mark, don't we? Epidemic continues to only get worse. Since California Association of Oral Surgeons, my organization, created this presentation in 2019, the epidemic has only worsened. Although the number of opioid prescriptions written by the doctors has decreased, the problem is it's worsening. So, what does it mean? Written by doctors each year has gone down dramatically. The number of overdose deaths continues to rise. So here's a little graph to show you that fentanyl obviously is the drug knocking people off, or you shouldn't use that, but killing them. Because you're important, you should always be aware of nitrous oxide. Colby, where are you, Colby? Colby gave me a little heads up about social media. I was unaware of this, that nitrous oxide, because of what's going on with Wayne, what's his name? Wayne, no, the entertainer, Wayne, right? Huh? No, anyway, sorry, but it's in the news, and it's running all over social media. It's about nitrous oxide. It was going on because a dentist was giving him nitrous oxide, which he claimed he became addicted to. And anyway, so this is like making the rounds. Nitrous oxide's been around for a long time. It's in whipped cream cans. Kids go to the store and sniff it. But there's something you don't know about this. Conway West. Hooray for this right here. Anyway, so they use it and they get like a little dizzy. It kind of mimics alcohol, okay? But it wears off very quickly. The only problem is if you don't mix it with oxygen, or if you put say you put a bag over your head to breathe more, you can die for the lack of oxygen. And you have to know these things. And I have a story to tell you real quickly about one of the docs in the town many, many years ago. Had a nurse that would close up on Fridays, and she would like to sit down and take a little whiff of nitrous to start the weekend. God knows how many years she was doing it. Only one day she did it on a Friday, and Monday morning one of the other nurses came in and found her dead in the chair because the oxygen ran out, and she was just lying there feeling real good until she died. How is nitrous used? Well, it's inhaled, and it's inhaled. And these are the ways that they do it, okay? No matter how you inhale it, if it's not mixed with oxygen, you will die. There's a thing called the Fink effect, but don't bother. You don't have to read that. But it's basically what it means is when the nitrous oxide that dissolves very readily into the blood, what it does is it squeezes out the oxygen that's supposed to be filling the alveoli in your lungs. And just by having too much on board, you're not getting enough flush of oxygen increased, it could kill you. So here's the last slide of the day, and this is up to you, everybody here, my new ambassadors. You're in control of your destination. You take the wrong road, drug addiction, overdose, death, life of misery. You take the right road, full of life, dreams fulfilled, family and friends. Do not take opioids, and do not accept any pills from anybody. I don't care who they are. And if you're in a place or a party or a bar and you leave a drink to go to the bathroom, whatever, you do not ever go back to that drink or take the drink with you or whatever. You just never leave it unattended. Anyway, thank you for your attention. I am turning this back to our maitre d'.
Thank you, Dr. K. What a wonderful presentation. And I'm sure some of you will have some questions for any of our guests today. We'll do questions at the end. So if you could just make a quick note to yourself of what you want to ask so you don't forget, we'll have some time at the end for questions. Next, Jody Barber lost her 19-year-old son and 3 of his close friends to an accidental prescription drug overdose in 2010. She soon realized her son's death and the many others that year were preventable and became an advocate. Jody could have kept silent and said it was a heart issue, but instead she chose to share her story in order to save another family from going through the devastation that she and her family were and still are going through. Jody has appeared on talk shows, and her story is featured in the just-released entitled book, Hope Springs from a Mother's Broken Heart by Teresa Anthony. She advocates to pass laws that will help curb the prescription drug epidemic. Jody Barber and Christine Wood produced a short documentary called Overtaken. You should look for that. Please welcome Jody Barber.
Okay, thank you for having me. So this is important for me to be here today, and I appreciate this opportunity so much. These deaths that are happening are preventable, and that's a big reason why I'm here. They are preventable deaths. So yes, my son died from a prescription drug overdose on January 8th, 2010. Not only did Jared pass away, but 3 of his close friends in that same year. This was before fentanyl was around. This was from prescription drugs that were overprescribed, opioids, benzodiazepine combinations. The opioids led to heroin on the streets for many of them. And today we have fentanyl. Those that are addicted to fentanyl or who have died from fentanyl began with a script. They were in the doctor's office getting opioids and addicted to them, and it led to heroin and then fentanyl. And then we have the 12 and the 13 and 14-year-old kids who aren't addicted, who are wanting to experiment and go online and purchase a pill, what they think is a Xanax or a Percocet or something else, and they're dying from one pill. One pill can kill. So what led me to this mission was Jared was addicted to marijuana, and it was a very, very difficult time period for us. He was smoking pot from the age of 14 till the day he died. He was addicted. His anxiety got worse. He'd have to wake up and start his day smoking weed. It was a nightmare, honestly. He was getting in trouble senior year in high school. Things were going on. He got a DUI, and yeah, things are just going downhill because of the marijuana use. Well, then he was almost 17, and he's out dirt biking with his best friend, and they each broke their collarbones within 2 hours of each other. Jared went to the hospital. The nurse called me, said, "I have your son here. He's in pain, and I'm going to give him Vicodin." And I said, "Okay, if he's in pain, thank you." I had no clue what Vicodin was. I had no idea that for the teenage brain that Vicodin is addicting and they like it. And so Jared continued to take Vicodin, not from my medicine cabinet, but from friends who were 18 years of age and were able to go and get 300 in a bottle from a very dirty doctor that was 45 miles away. So this doctor is overprescribing Vicodin to the kids. It's all cash related. These teenagers are all addicted to it. And then they found out that Oxycontin was on the market and on the shelves, and you can get even a better high from using and misusing Oxycontin. So now, by this time, they're addicted. They're now crushing the pill, and they're misusing Oxycontin. Many are overdosing. These doctors are also prescribing benzodiazepines, such as Xanax. So they're dying from an Oxycontin and a Xanax. So now they made it so that you couldn't crush the pill any longer. So the manufacturers, they redid their pills so you couldn't crush them, the Oxy. Well, they found out there was another opioid that's even stronger than Oxycontin, and that was called oxymorphone, or known as Opana. And this is a very, very addicting medication that's for terminal stage cancer. So now Jared and his friends are cutting that up into quarters and sharing. So it's just one drug leading to the next. A lot of these kids, like I said, now they're also on heroin because it's much cheaper. One Opana pill was $60. So many of them are now shooting up heroin. And they're in by themselves. They're in the bathroom. They're in their bedrooms. They're found in Walmarts, and they're dying. And these seniors that are addicted to these pills, they're not thinking about going to the school dances. They're not thinking about going to the football games. They wake up thinking about how are they going to get their fix. Because if they don't have it, they're going to go into something called a withdrawal, and it's nasty. They feel like they're going to die. It's not fun. So it's very tragic, and it's very sad what's happening to teenagers today and back then. So my son's addicted to Opana, and I find him nodding off in my backyard at 3 a.m. So my husband and I, his dad, we didn't know what to do. He did not want treatment. We didn't know what to do. We went to a psychologist. That doctor referred us to, quote, the best doctor in Orange County, and that doctor now prescribed more pills. So I'm monitoring. I'm giving my son these medications. The first visit, he said, all his cravings to opioids and marijuana will go away. Take these benzos, take anti-anxiety, antidepressants, and he'll be okay. I'm trusting the doctor. I'm like, okay, because I don't have these medications in my medicine cabinet. I didn't know anything about them at the time. So I'm giving Jared these pills each day. So within 3 months, he continued to relapse on Opana. It was a nightmare on Thanksgiving and Christmas Day at Grandma's with a bloody nose. He was relapsing. These pills weren't working for him. And so he's on benzodiazepines, one called Klonopin, that's similar to Xanax. He's on Cymbalta, which is an antidepressant. He's taking anti-anxiety, antidepressants, and now this is 3 months, and now it's January. One more visit with the doctor, January 6th. I'm this time in the waiting room. I went into every visit with Jared. This time I'm in the waiting room, and he came out with handful sample boxes of Seroquel. Seroquel was prescribed because he kept asking Jared if he's sleeping okay, and Jared said, not really. So he prescribed Seroquel. Well, he overprescribed Seroquel, and he gave him sample boxes, 2 handfuls, and said take 3 to 4 at bedtime. So I looked it up on the computer. I said, Jared, I don't want you taking this. I don't like the side effects. You're already on all these other medications. Well, he kept 1 sample box. So the next day, January 7th, I went to bed at 11 o'clock. He's on the couch watching a movie with 2 of his friends. My husband woke up at 3 a.m. and discovered Jared on our couch, sitting up and barely breathing. He called me downstairs, and I watched his dad give him CPR and, the gurgling and all that was occurring. I called 911, rushed him to the hospital where Jared was born, and he passed away at 3:47 a.m. Jared had relapsed on Opana with his friends. He cut it up into quarters, and he took another Opana. He had Klonopin in the system, he had Cymbalta, and he had a quarter of Opana, Cymbalta, and Klonopin, marijuana in the system. And so we went back home after he died, and we had to wake up his brother. And his brother Blake was then 15. And in a couple weeks, his brother is going to be 30. And Jared should be 34. And so this destroys the entire family. This is not just you, but it's going to affect the entire family. And that's what you have to remember. Is it fair to them? Blake lost his best friend, his only sibling. So there are preventable ways to prevent overdosing. Narcan, naloxone, keeping it at home, in your cars, everywhere, in purses. Narcan saves lives. Also, the 911, the Good Samaritan law, because back then that wasn't in effect. So these kids were being thrown in dirt This is my poster. Thank you. And this is my son, Jared. These are all his close friends that he went through middle school, elementary, and high school together. Football players. You know, we have to end the stigma that surrounds addiction because this is happening to any family. Straight A students, cheerleaders, football players are on this poster. His friend was in the Army for 2 years. So this is just a few that have died in Orange County. I mean, we've lost hundreds of kids. And I put this poster in 8.5 by 11 in all the business windows. And I got on my mission right away. I exposed the dirty doctor that was out there overprescribing all these pills. She's in jail, 30 years to life, which is great. And so the poster is important. Everyone's stories that they share in my film Overtaken is important. And I'd hope that you do watch it and go on YouTube and watch Overtaken, because every story matters and every story will probably make you really think about doing it, because what it led them, the addiction led them to prison. It led them to jail. It led them to overdosing numerous times. Thank God they're still here. And you know what? There's hope. As long as you're walking, talking, and breathing, there's hope, because as long as you do reach out for help, talk to an adult, and get the help that you need, there is hope. And there's just, you're going to hear it in a minute, but there's millions of people that are in recovery that are doing great. So that's an important message. Thank you.
It's pretty heavy. Oh, yes, of course.
I alluded to this when I was speaking.
This is, I wanted to mention one more thing, especially for the parents that are watching at home. So there's a new genetic test that's available. It was FDA approved for those that are in chronic pain and their first visit to the doctor, possibly needing opioids, like a 30-day supply. Before you do that, it would be awesome if you went. It's optional, but if you took the test to check to see if you have the genetic gene for addiction. And it's an easy, simple nose swab, and it's just so important. I mean, it's going to save so many lives if before you're prescribed these opioids, you check to see if you have the gene. So that's a breakthrough, and I'm so happy. You can go to Avert, AVERT, capital D, test.com, and then you can check it out. So again, this is going to save lives. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And Jody, would you mind sharing with everyone how they can get in touch with you or your organization if they want to follow up or have questions? Do you have a easy website or contact email that you want to share? Just hit your little button there.
Yes, it's called overtakenlives.org.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing and being here today. Okay, next up, to keep moving, because we do have a little bit of a time crunch today. Jennifer Trintricle is an LA native with 4 years and 11 months in recovery. She is currently a sponsor of 9 people, making recovery a focal point of her life. She is joined by her sponsor, Joseph Casaselli, and I'm going to let them take you through some of their experiences. And Jennifer, I think if we begin with you, you can tell us a little bit about your story, we'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Hi, again, Jennifer. I'll do this as quickly as I can. I think that when I was in high school, I had like a preconceived notion of what an addict looked like, or the type of people that got addicted to drugs. And I'm a nice Jewish girl. I was raised in the Valley. I went to USC. I'm also a prior convicted felon and a recovered heroin addict. So I was wrong, right? How did that happen? I actually had a friend who knew a doctor who I could pay $200 for and get 180 Norcos, 90 Xanax, and 60 Somas. Fantastic, right? I didn't think I was susceptible to being a drug addict, so I took them, and I was under the misconception that I got them from a doctor, so they were fine, right? You're correct. The more you take, the more you need. And what would happen is I could no longer stay high on the amount that I was getting, so I started to manufacture prescriptions myself. I printed out the scripts, I went online, I learned how to write them out, and I just got all the pills that I needed, right? And as you can probably predict, I started getting arrested. I went to jail, in and out of rehabs, in and out of all sorts of things. All the resources at my disposal were irrelevant. They just did not help. Fast forward 10 years, I was heavily addicted to heroin and meth and anything anybody had. I was fighting prison charges for massive pharmaceutical fraud. I lost. I got 3 years. I did 17 months. And I found my ways in the room of Alcoholics Anonymous, and it saved my life. And as a result, I spend my time focusing on how to help other people stay sober and achieve sobriety. Thanks. I don't know how to say.
My name is Joseph Casaselli, and I am also a person in recovery. When I was 15, I was trying to think of like what I'm going to say today, like over the past week, and I work in a treatment center right now at a detox, and one of the clients there, he actually graduated Beverly Hills High School, and he's 20 years old, and he didn't think that, this disease or this addiction, genetic, or however you want to put it, would get to him, but it's just something that he struggles with too. And I started when I was 15 years old. I started drinking. I wanted to feel a part of, I think it's there. I wanted to feel like a part of, like my friends started drinking. I remember when I was 15, my girlfriend at the time started smoking weed, and I was like, I want to smoke some weed and be a part of like the cool crowd. And little did I know it was going to turn into something way bigger than I would ever imagine. My dad hurt his back. I played hockey for 10 years when I was younger, ice hockey. And when my dad hurt his back, I was going through some pain. My mother gave me one of those pills, and it was almost like instantaneously I was addicted to opiates. And some people, they can take them and it's okay, like they take them as prescribed. There's other people that may have this genetic disposition, like myself, that when they take them, they just want more and more. And I also want to thank Beverly Hills Fire Department and the paramedics and police department, because these guys right here are some people that have literally saved my life. I've overdosed multiple times, and these are the first responders that show up, that have Narcan available, that reverse the effects of opiates, and they've literally saved my life. So thank you guys for all your service. And Jody was telling her story about her son. It's so wild. In 2010, the same week that her son overdosed and passed away, I think she said January 7th, I overdosed that same week in 2010, and the gurgling was happening. My brother was playing Xbox, and he came in like 30 minutes later thinking like he's making some weird noises. He came into the bedroom and he saw me overdosed, and they called the paramedics, and they came, and I ended up going into like a coma for a few days. And I'm somebody that I have like a great education. I went to a prestigious college in Tulsa, Oklahoma. These are things like I never thought would happen to me. And nowadays, with fentanyl being in a lot of these pills, it's like very scary because, although I have the opportunity, because of the first responders, to like live another day, a lot of people don't have that opportunity because they think they're just taking a Xanax. They think they're doing just a little bit of ketamine. Another person, there was a funeral this week for a friend. He graduated Hamilton High a few years ago. He thought he was taking 2C, and he overdosed, and his funeral is this week. So it's very dangerous and it's very scary. And as a part of my own recovery today, I feel like it's very important for me to talk about it and to share my experience with it, to stay sober myself as well. One speaker said that the opposite of addiction is not sobriety, but the opposite of addiction is connection. And for me, that rings true. Jennifer is my sponsor, and like through like our community that we have of people that are like in recovery, we're able to talk to each other And not every day is easy. People that struggle with these things, I was with a friend yesterday who graduated Beverly Hills High. They're this 25-year-old girl, and she's like, yeah, I'm using ketamine, but I want to stop. And she's able to talk about that today, but unfortunately, because it is often laced with fentanyl and these other drugs, it's possible she could get a bad dose of ketamine. And for me to for her to trust me enough to say that was very compelling for me. I'm grateful to be a part of a large community that is in recovery. Thank you, Dr. K, for having us come out today. And that's all I have to share. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I just want to clarify something. I believe I misspoke. So who's sponsoring whom? Which one is it? I apologize. I think I said it the opposite. Before we move on to Sergeant Fair, I do have one question I think that everybody would be curious. Jennifer, maybe you can speak to this. If there's someone watching and they're like, yeah, I have an issue. They know they have an issue, but they're embarrassed. They're scared. What should they do?
Luckily in Southern California, the recovery here is second to none. It's the best in the world. And we have so many resources. You can go online to aa.com or it was aa.gov. .org, aa.org, and you can find a meeting. There's 3,000 AA meetings a week in Los Angeles, all over the place. And there's a lot of shame behind addiction, but when you walk into a room of Alcoholics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, any of them, their primary purpose is to help the next person get sober. So there's no shame. There's so many resources. If you're scared to talk to people just find the closest meeting and walk in there. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. Please share that for anyone who doesn't watch this presentation. Okay, moving on. We are joined today by Beverly Hills Police Sergeant Billy Fair. Sergeant Fair has 22 years of experience as a police officer, holding numerous leadership positions, including 5 years on SWAT. He was named the 2023 Sergeant of the Year by the Police Officers Association. No doubt he has had many encounters with criminal activity fueled by drugs. So he's with us today to tell a few of those stories and some cautionary tales. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Listening to the speakers that I'm following, they already covered a lot of stuff that I plan on talking about today, but I have 3 people sitting to my left right now, 2 whom I'll congratulate for being here and moving past the addiction. We deal with a lot of people who never get there, and I'm going to talk about some of those people today. And we have one speaker, a mom, who I wasn't there for what happened to your son. I'm always sorry to hear that, but I have delivered that news to parents. I've delivered that news to siblings, and it's one of my least favorite things to do. I don't often share personal things about me to people I speak with in the community. Beverly Hills is a pretty tight community, so I came from another police department. I never shared anything about myself. The level of respect and compassion that we get from our community is huge, so I feel more comfortable sharing. I look in this crowd here, and I've seen a lot of your faces. I've been to your high school. You guys all know Officer Maitland, Officer Rudy. You guys know who they are? I see them talking to you at your lunchtime sometimes, but nonetheless, I have a sophomore daughter, so when I come and speak in front of this group, it's very close to me. I don't share stories with my kids about work, almost ever, but I will tell you the type of stories that I do share. I share stories related to drug addiction and the things that happen with it. We heard some great presentations about how it all starts. It can be as simple as being at a party and taking one hit of something, thinking, oh, this is just for fun. It's going to make me feel good. These guys look like they're having a good time. Sometimes that's exactly what you get out of it, and sometimes it goes the other way. So I'm going to tell you 3 real fast stories, and you can ask me some questions on them if you want, but I think that they should all seem relevant to this discussion, especially with your age group. The first one, I'll tell you a story about a 16-year-old mother. Obviously, being a 16-year-old mother, she started really young. She had some problems. She was addicted to drugs. She gave birth. I didn't know her until the day that I got called to her house on a baby not breathing call. It was probably about midnight. Got there. Baby was blue. This was a 16-week-old baby. Blue. And the first thing she did when I walked through the door was pass this baby to me. And I'm holding a 16-week-old baby in my arms. Yeah, we've had CPR training. They talk about what to do with adults. toddlers and even infants, but the first time that you get handed that baby to do CPR, and it's something you, no matter how much you prepared for, weren't prepared for. Nonetheless, I did what I did momentarily, and the best moment of that night for me was when the fire department walked in and took over the CPR, because it was just a terrible thing to have to do. I'll fast forward a little bit. The baby did not make it. The baby died. I was with the baby's 16-year-old mother in the hospital while they were still attempting life-saving measures, and had to give her that news. So that's one thing that I think about my career. People always ask me, hey, what's the worst thing that you've ever seen? Honestly, it's always babies. But I'll move on to the next story. Obviously, that was a 16-year-old who was addicted to drugs. What I failed to mention was she was high the night that this happened, and she actually rolled over on her baby and didn't know it and smothered her baby. So think about that. Next story, right here on Wilshire Boulevard, we get a call of an unknown medical aid. I was working in the watch commander's office at that time, and our drone actually got there first. You guys all know that we have a drone program. So from the office, I could see the images, and I see a contorted female's body. I think she was 15 or 16. When I say contorted, we all know that we lay down, we look peaceful when we lay down. You ever seen a dead body on the ground? It doesn't typically lie in the fashion where it just looks like it's peacefully resting. They typically land in contorted ways where their legs are in ways you wouldn't expect to see them if you were laying down peacefully. But we have this image from above. I actually took this image home and shared it with my kids to show them what happens if you use drugs. So this 15 or 16-year-old girl met up with somebody that day at his car, got in the back seat, took a hit of something, and about 15 seconds later was lying on the ground dead on Wilshire Boulevard. We're talking 1 mile from your high school. So don't think this doesn't happen in your community. Don't think I can take that one hit and have it not happen to me. She thought she was taking a hit of marijuana, which she was, but it was laced with something. So one hit, one time, left her lying there dead on the sidewalk on Wilshire Boulevard. The third story that I will share with you, I took notes that I wouldn't forget these stories. Give me 1 second. Oh, this one, we're a few people a little bit older than you, but this was also in the city of Beverly Hills. College party. Is that coming from my microphone? College party, probably 50 people in attendance at an apartment in Beverly Hills. And we get the call of a medical aid. We get there, and there were 3 people on the ground, all not breathing at the same time inside the residence. Somebody was passing around some pills. The pills were laced with fentanyl. 3 people had immediate adverse reactions and were lying there dying when we got there. We talked about Narcan. I had 3 officers simultaneously administering Narcan while giving CPR. 2 out of the 3 ended up making it. 1 of them died. And again, that's a party not too far from your high school with people not much older than you who probably thought, hey, I've taken this before. I've had a hit of this. It can't happen to me. 2 out of 3 made it. 1 died that night in front of their friends. I will say this. We talked about the Good Samaritan law that was passed. I know you talked about back in the days, everybody getting arrested if they called the police and they were fearful of calling the police. It's a great law that's passed. It's very important for you to understand if you are at a party, even if you are there in possession of drugs, even if you're using drugs, if somebody falls down, they're on the ground and they're suffering from an overdose, do not fear, you will not get in trouble. Right? We're not going to come in. We're not going to arrest you. We're not going to search you for drugs. We're going to care for that person and make sure that we can try to save their life. You will not get in trouble. That's what that law is all about. In the past, yeah, every person there would probably be arrested who was in possession of drugs. Those times, they're long gone. If you're at a party, you see something, someone needs help, please call us. That law will save lives. Just like that night at the party. There were people who hesitated to call the police, but because they ultimately did, police showed up. Fire department showed up, and 2 out of 3 people lived because somebody called them. I hope all 3 of those stories at least kind of give you something to think about. It could be you. You're all at that age where the peer pressure is going to kick in. You're going to be somewhere. Somebody's going to be passing something around. Whether you've tried it or not, that first time could be the last time.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Just a side note on that note, there is an organization that a lot of people in this community support called the Brent Shapiro Foundation, and it was formed because of that reason. A young man, Brent Shapiro, was at a party and was with friends and took too much. And I don't even know the details of everything he took, but the friends were too afraid and he died. So, here we are years later, the family's raising money every year for awareness to help other kids, but they could have had a very different story and a different life with him. So I'm so glad for that law. Moving on to our last esteemed guest. We're so happy to have you here. Thank you for being here. This was a last minute request, so we appreciate you accommodating because we know you're busy. But we are fortunate today to have representation from the Beverly Hills Fire Department EMS division. How many of you here know that we have a nurse practitioner program? Have you heard about that? Raise your hand if you have. Okay, I figured not a lot of you had. This is something so important. This is a pioneering department, or a pioneering program, I should say. Apologies. This is something that not every fire department certainly has. So we're very lucky in Beverly Hills. And with us today, we have Chris Hobbs, who is a firefighter paramedic. Thank you for being here. And we have Rin West, who is a nurse practitioner. Can you tell us a little bit about this program and how this is so special, why this is such an important program in Beverly Hills and what you guys do?
Hi guys, thanks for having us. I met some of you when I was here for the career day. Our unit basically functions as a mobile urgent care. So our goal is to keep people out of the emergency room. If we see someone that we can treat in their house and prevent them from having to go to the hospital, that's where our unit comes in. So we don't personally work with patients that have overdose. Chris has, because he also works on another ambulance. For us, if we see minor injuries or wounds that we can fix, or treat, we can see patients in their home or out on the street, and part of that oftentimes is writing prescriptions. One thing that we haven't really talked too much about here is the ways that you can be exposed to opioids that are not something that you can avoid as easily as making a choice at a party. A lot of us trust our healthcare providers, and we know that they want the best for us, but it's important to understand that there was a time in medicine where providers were really taught and encouraged to prescribe pain medication to help people not be in pain. And there's still a lot of providers out there that write a lot of prescriptions for narcotics. Since you are going to be 18 and going to doctors on your own soon, it's important to be an advocate for yourself and ask your provider for pain medications that are not narcotics. And if they are narcotics, be aware what they can do and use them only when absolutely necessary. Like Dr. K said, anti-inflammatories and other pain medications are very effective for pain. So I just don't want you to go, into an office visit and get prescriptions that you think that you have to take because you're trusting your provider. Just be an advocate for yourself and use the minimum possible. I'll let Chris talk on overdose.
Yeah, so although responding to overdoses isn't our primary role with this unit, I do have a lot of background with it. I've been on the fire department for 18 years. I still work on our paramedic ambulances on occasion. I still work on our fire engines. So we see this on a regular basis. The numbers have steadily increased over the years. It doesn't matter your background. It doesn't matter your community. It's in every community. And make no mistake, it's here in Beverly Hills too. We've seen a lot of it. Narcan is a phenomenal tool. It's getting out there more and more. Our police department carries it, which is great. But keep in mind, you have 5 to 6 minutes for your brain before you have permanent brain damage and death sits in without oxygen. So that Narcan needs to get there very quick. We've had some great successes with it, some not so great successes. Typically, these patients don't jump up and thank you and say, hey, you saved my life. More often than not, they come out swinging because you just took away their high. So it's very prevalent. We've seen not just hardcore addicts overdose, a lot of first-time kids trying it for the first time. So it's definitely out there. Be careful. And if you guys have questions, we're more than happy to answer questions after. So.
Thank you so much. I'm sure you have plenty of questions. Before we move into questions, I promised you at the beginning I'd give you a little bit of insight into the world of entertainment and drug use. I, for about 20 years now, have produced live music concerts, among other types of events, but that's a primary thing that I do. And we work with artists of all stages of their career, but a lot of global superstars, names you know very well. There is rampant drug use in the entertainment industry, not just music, but certainly film, television, as we know. I'll speak a little bit about live music and why this ends up happening to people. If you are on the stage and you're performing, you know, I don't care if you've been doing it for 30 years, you're still nervous when you go out there every time. There's still a little bit of stage fright. What happens is an artist oftentimes will get used to doing something before they go on stage to calm their nerves. Some of it's as simple as a shot of whiskey before they go on stage. Some of them take some sort of drug, and it's usually to get them in a state that they can step out and not be so freaked out, frankly, because you've got 30, 40, 50,000 people in front of you. That's fine, I guess, if that's all you do. But as we know, these things lead to more. You know, that feeling, they want it now when they're not on the stage. Some of them also start doing it for the opposite effect, not to calm their nerves, but to hype them up so that they can go out there and put on an electrifying performance. So there's all kinds of reasons why it may start somewhat innocently, if that's the appropriate term, but then it becomes more than they can handle. Behind the scenes, it's more rampant than you might think, because people who work in live entertainment, they work very, very long hours. It's a very fast-paced industry, especially when you're out on a tour. Think about it. You've got an artist who's in one city one night and the next city the next night. What happens in between that? People are tearing down stages, they're getting on buses, they're traveling. It is not a normal lifestyle by any stretch of the imagination. And it's unhealthy in a lot of ways. Primarily lack of sleep. So people are expected to function at a very high level. There's a lot of money at stake. Everything's on a very, very tight deadline. You have to perform, but you have to get it done in the same 24 hours that everybody has, right? So you start taking something so that you can work for 20 hours, 22 hours, work around the clock if you need to. And that leads, as you can imagine, to something you can't control. So one of the things I want to leave you guys with that I tell everybody, and I do a lot of mentoring, I'm actually on the CTE advisory board here for the high school for the Music Industry Center. And anytime I lecture those kids about their careers, you know, I try to get in that you're going to be offered a lot in the creative industries. It's just part of the culture of any creative industry. I really beg you not to go down that path, find a healthier way, because you can function until you cannot. And people have this misconception that, no, I'm a functioning alcoholic. You might have heard that term. I'm a functioning drug user. Well, you're functioning until you stop functioning, right? Which means you stop showing up for work on time. You lose your relationships. You get fired. You're no longer functioning, and it just gets worse from there. So please know that, like, the artist you're watching, many of the artists you see on stage right now, I'm not going to say all of them by any stretch, but many of them are on something. And as Dr. K mentioned earlier, you hear about the ones that overdose and die. So just don't do that. Please. You guys are so special and you're so creative. Please find a healthier way. So now let's move into questions. I want to, let's see, I think the best way to do this is if you have a question, if you could raise your hand, I'd be happy to call on you. I'd ask you to state your question very loudly so we can hear, but I'm also going to repeat it in the microphone for those at home or watching the replay. So who has got a question for any panelist, and let us know who it's directed at. I see you right here.
For Dr. K or anyone who can answer, I was just wondering, like, why do they lace these pills with fentanyl? Like, what is the objective for drug makers?
Okay, so the question is, why are drugs being laced with fentanyl and other things? What is in it for the drug makers? Great question.
Well, the only interest in the drug suppliers, money. And how do you get the money? Well, you create something within an individual that makes them need it more than life itself. Willing to beat people up, kill them, rob them, you name it. If you can develop a substance or use a substance that can get you in that state, they will get the money, no matter what it takes. So the problem is, what is this fentanyl doing? Well, fentanyl is a synthetic narcotic, and it's easily created, it's easily mixed, The trouble is the efficacy, in other words, if you took 2 Advil and then your doc said, how you doing? Well, it's doing pretty good. And I just have a little trouble sleeping and say, okay, well, take a third one. You know, it's not going to cause a problem because you can take several of those pills. There's a wide parameter of the dosage. When you're dealing with fentanyl, you're talking of micrograms, okay? That means you take 1 little cc and break it down into, we're talking, like we said, grains of salt. And you think people making those pills are looking at what they're doing? They don't care. They just make it and get it out to get the money. And the point is that because of that, again, it's a narcotic. So it offers to you all the same things that other narcotics offer you. And of course, you get the upregulation again right away. So that's the name of the game. The name of the game is to get you in a condition where you need it desperately. And then you'll do anything to get the money. And where do you think the money goes? It goes into the pusher, who then goes back to the main guys, and it gets distributed. And it's a business, okay? Whether you have an open, we have right now a border that's wide open. But it was coming across before the wide opening. The wide opening just made it easy. So sometimes I kind of kid around. I talk to people. I said, you don't think the government opened it not just to get people coming into this country who might be voters someday or whatever. You think they're catering to the drug cartels? You don't know what's going on. The whole thing is crazy. So the best thing you can do is listen to everything you've heard here and don't do it. Just don't do it. The first time, if you're driving a car, right, and you say, you know what, there's nobody around, I want to go 130 miles an hour. I mean, there are people in Beverly Hills I see coming down their streets. They must be out of their minds. And they're doing it. One of these times, it's going to kill you. The first time, it could kill you. So that's that. I don't want to take up too much time. That's the way it. Just use your brain.
Did you guys want to say something?
I was just going to say it's actually cheaper, and so they can make it a stronger pill with less, and they save money. So it works out for them in that way.
It occurs to me listening to that, it's similar to Russian roulette. I mean, would you hold a gun to your head with a bullet in it and pull the trigger and hope you don't die? I mean, that's the same game you're playing, right? Because maybe something's laced and you die that time. I mean, and maybe it's not and you live, but the next time maybe you die. So, I mean, if you think about it that way, for me, it's a visual. Would I ever do that? I would never do that. Anyway, we'll move on. Go ahead. Question. Great question. The question is, if you know you have the addictive gene to painkillers or any other substance, what do you do if you need pain control? Jennifer?
Hi. So as somebody who's in the recovery, we have a lot of, there's a lot of alternative medicines, like he was talking about, like anti-inflammatory. Like, we don't take any mind-altering substances, as that's part of being in recovery, right? So we can't take narcotics if we go to the hospital. I will say that there are certain conditions. I had a friend who's in recovery, and he broke his back, and the doctor told him, you have to take these, right? But there's support systems in play as a result of that. We have sponsorship, we have fellows in recovery that can guide us through that we can lean on if you have to take these medicines. But there are alternative resources, so you don't have to automatically go to that. And like she was saying, there's it's worth doing research beforehand.
Just to add something to that, in my office, when somebody comes in and they're in a program, okay, and I want to give them something, I try everything I can to give them the non-opioid. But if they can call me 2 days later and say, listen, it's not helping or whatever, I call the people they're involved with the drugs. And I said, who's handling it? Who's the sponsor? Who's this? I get them on the phone, or I get a doc on the phone. I said, hey, listen, here's the situation. What do you think? What would you want me to do here? And they'll offer me some advice and tell me how to handle it, because I just will not in fact, Eliza, who was here the last time, she said, yeah, I kept asking Dr. Ye. He said, you ain't getting anything. But the point is, that's the way it is. The doc should know enough, and doctors know today not to go throwing those opioids around. Believe me, they're on the record of being told to back off that stuff. Now, if you're dealing with end of life cancer patients and stuff like that, we all understand that. But we're talking about day in and day out practices. So it just shouldn't happen unless you you check with who's taking care of that patient.
In the blue shirt. Oh, great question. How do you know if your doctor is over-prescribing a medication? Who wants to take that? Dr. K?
Well, first of all, today with that computer of yours, you can go there and say, I just got a prescription from Dr. Jones for 25, whatever the drug is. Is that appropriate? And kick the button and see what happens. Okay? I mean, it's simple. And believe me, there's a lot of stuff. I've gotten things off that little phone this morning where I was going to talk to you about something with the secondary gas effect. And what I got on that in 3 seconds was better than some of the medical stuff I was reading out of the journals. So I'm just letting you know that use it. It's a great tool. Use it. And if you have to ask a question, gee, I wonder if this is okay, then find out. Okay? Then find out. You could call an emergency room. You can ask to speak to a nurse, to speak to. If you wanted to get cheaper tickets to a show, I bet you'd be on that thing figuring it out, or an airline ticket. You could do it. Just if it doesn't look right to you, you can do it. And ask the doctor, is this appropriate? You want me to have, why am I getting all these pills? You have to be your own advocate, unless, God forbid, you're in a situation where you've signed off for somebody else to advocate for you. But when you go into hospitals, you go into anywhere, you need an advocate. Don't the police say when you're arrested, they say, I'll read you the rights, okay. Or they say to you, don't say anything. I'm not saying anything to my attorneys here, because the attorney becomes the advocate, and they don't want this person to self-incriminate themselves. So the point is, be your own advocate. Open the mouth and ask the questions, and don't be afraid of being embarrassed or looking stupid, because the stupid one will be the doctor who's overprescribing.
Jody.
I just want to mention that I know so many young people that started their addiction because of a wisdom tooth pull. And, my son, he had all 4 of his wisdom teeth pulled a couple years ago. And I gave him some Tylenol. He went home and I gave him a Tylenol. He took an Advil. If you rotate Tylenol and Advil, that they're both not addicting and they work and for the pain. So you don't have to have a Vicodin or a Norco for a wisdom tooth pull. And that's important, to know that. Also for broken collarbones, for minor injuries, there's alternatives, therapies, and there's different ways. For the parents too, if you're on Instagram, follow Cure Addiction Now. They're looking for a cure for addiction on that site. Every Brain Matters is an excellent Instagram page for you to follow as well about marijuana. And yeah.
That's great information. Thank you so much. Another question in the front. Yellow pants. We couldn't hear you. I'm sorry. The question is, do you believe in being sober for life? Is that for Jennifer or Joseph?
Yeah, the short answer is yeah, because otherwise you might not have a life, right? Like I don't have the ability to control how I use and what that looks like or where that ends. So if I'm not, I'm playing Russian roulette, right? That's the short answer, essentially.
There's a breakdown with alcohol, for example. There are binge drinkers that only drink on weekends. There are other types of drinkers that actually, like you said, functional drunks, right? And they exist. They go to work drunk. It's broken down in so many different levels. But the fact of the matter is, your lungs were meant to breathe air, okay? Not vaping, not cigarettes. I love the young people who want clean air. I'm a green guy. I want clean air. I want clean air, right? Meanwhile, they're vaping. Will you get your head straight? If you want clean air, live it. Walk the walk, talk the talk, and put only air in your lungs. That's it. Okay.
Okay, we are about out of time. I think we have time for maybe one more question, and then we're going to wrap it up. In the green, you've been waiting. Thank you. Oh, great question. So the question is, if you are at a party and you're underage and you realize someone's in distress and needs you, you should be calling 911. Does the Good Samaritan law apply to you if you're underage? So I'll let Sergeant Fair answer that question.
Short answer is yes. Make the call, save a life, you won't get in trouble.
I'd also like to add to that too, kind of, I know you're young, but imagine living the rest of your life knowing you could have saved someone's life by making a phone call and you maybe chose not to. That's a lot to bear the rest of your life. And as you get older, it would actually weigh harder and heavier on you, I believe. So do the right thing. Do the right thing. And anyone else want to weigh in on that? Dr. K, you look like...
No, you're absolutely right. But everybody raise your hand. Right hand. Raise your right hand. I promise to be an ambassador. What you've heard here, what I've heard here makes a lot of sense. Go forward, soldiers.
You guys have been a wonderful group. Thank you for listening so respectfully. Yes, thank you to our panelists for being here and taking time out of their very busy days. And also a last thank you to one of your most recent graduates, Colby Gallardian, who produced this today. He's in the back. Class of 2024. Thank you, Colby. If you have any questions or want to follow up with anyone, I'm sure everyone would be happy to speak with you. Or please, Colby knows how to get in touch with any of them if you have follow-up questions. Thank you all. Please share this information. Have a good day.